No, we are being sober-minded today. We've got some...
Sober-minded, I like that.
That's actually a biblical reference. The Apostle Paul beseeches to be ye sober-minded.
I see. Anyway, the world is about to find out that we're Bible lunatics.
Yes, it is.
In some ways, at least.
So we are drinking, it's brewing at the moment, this very lovely Taylor's of Harrogate coffee. It's called High Voltage.
Product placement there.
Yes, please sponsor us.
How much have you paid?
Absolutely nothing. I paid £3.40 for this.
Yeah, so, maybe you could claim it.
Yeah. So you know you were saying about the strengths of coffee, and this is number 7.
7 out of 5.
Yeah, 7 out of 5.
See. Excellent.
Just like my test scores.
Well, I see. Yeah. Look at me. I've done so well. Yeah. I know.
Yes, I know. Well, that was more an Asian joke than anything.
Yes, I know, but I'm not allowed to be racist.
No, I am. Yes.
About that, anyway, so Bible.
Yes. Why this subject matter? Because this comes back to that infamous conversation we had at that airport in Sweden.
Okay, before people start to label us with Bible lunatics as such, I would say that you don't necessarily need to be Christian in order to work out that there's very, very, very interesting stuff in the Bible if you treat it as a historical text.
Yes.
Because the book of Ecclesiastes, which is in Hebrew it's called Kohelet, which is
hence the title of the EP.
Is actually full of content that you would not expect in, the traditional image of Bible, thinking about how God created humanity and Abraham was very happily living with his, children and all
I
of
think
those stars.
The current Christian culture is to be very...
It's not to be trusted in some.
Well, it's very happy clappy. Is the only way. It's very
compared to how it used to be portrayed in the history. I would think.
So there's there are huge swathes of the Bible that I think, because they don't gel with this sort of modern marketable form of Christianity, they just don't get studied very much. Or they don't get talked about.
Wide public, at least.
Yes.
I mean, it's different if you're actually,
Alright, so let's put it this way. I grew up in the church. I have not once heard a sermon on Ecclesiastes.
Neither have I. I think, the book of Job, is
Job, yes.
Yeah, in English. That gets covered quite a lot in Poland.
Oh, does it? Fair enough. That's
but the Polish church, I'd say, is less, as you call it, happy-clappy.
They're a little more austere, a little more serious.
I would say yes, or rather, I don't know. There's a great deal of people going to the church weekly because of the social pressure and all that. At least that's my impression. And a lot of people are not really paying as much attention as I think they should
Fair.
be. But there are differences. However, I will genuinely agree that the Bible can be a fascinating read if you can bear the language, because it's not the easiest book.
No. I found Ecclesiastes very difficult to pick apart, but I found the fact that I needed to put effort into reading something to be very rewarding. Yes.
So what we're trying to talk about is how the book of Ecclesiastes, being different to this modern, if you like, marketable image of church, how from our point of view at least, you don't really see that covered a lot these days.
No, especially not in Christian music.
No, aside from, let's say, serious music, organ compositions, just organ.
Yeah. So
but that doesn't get listened to by the masses.
No, and in fact that brings me to a point that I was thinking about earlier today, which was the church used to be a real patron of the serious arts. They commissioned paintings, they commissioned great works of composition.
You could argue that medieval paintings, the Christian paintings, were quite abstract in some ways.
Yeah.
You'd have the devil's figure much bigger than the mortals, if you like.
Yeah.
Of course, that wasn't the real. They weren't going for portraying the realistic image. It was all symbolic, wasn't it?
Yes.
Especially that a lot of people, the masses, they couldn't read. You couldn't write things down. They had to picture those things mentally. They had to saw images of the hell, let's say, or the heaven, for instance. So, I don't know, I think that was generally the case with medieval paintings, that, whoever was commanding a group of people would be pictured as a bigger figure than everyone else.
Yeah,
but that's, of course, visual art as opposed to music, which is always different.
But then the idea of, say, someone like J.S. Bach, who wrote a new, I'm going to get the word wrong, is it an oratorio? I think
I'm not sure what
every week, but there was a thing for that week's worship at the church. He would write a brand new composition.
Yes,
for that.
Imagine how fertile his brain had to be in terms of musical composition.
Where is that now in Christian culture?
Well, Hillsong come up with a lot of songs, a lot of repetition of 4-chord sequences.
It's
if you like.
now again. This is a very odd thing, because I know a lot of people watching this.
How's the coffee, by the way?
Oh yes, let's get that.
Okay, Karen, you keep ranting.
Yeah, there's a lot of people watching this who maybe aren't plugged into that area of culture. If you stumble across it online, you'll see.
Sorry to disturb you.
This guy.
I'm not good at.
You will see millions and millions of views of these artists, and you'll be like, I've never heard of these people, because it's this curious little bubble, all of its own, that never seems to leave Christian internet.
This doesn't seem to work very well.
No, it's just because there's that much coffee in it. You just have to do it slowly.
That's perfect. Anyway, yes, I don't know, so, it seems like
but
there is a bit of a void, really.
Yeah, so
the melancholic, the meditative, if that's a word.
It is. All I'm saying is to those watching who are like, what are they talking about? What's Hillsong? Just Google Hillsong.
No, don't. It will be better.
No, I feel like people need to understand how creatively barren a lot of this stuff is, and the reason I'm talking about it with such disdain is because this is my faith they're talking about, and it's like you listen to these songs and you're like, that's the best you got? Really? You believe in a creator, and this is all you can come up with?
Yeah, it's a little bit depressive, so we're complaining about stuff again. But then I will come back to my previous point. There's a lot of abstract, powerful music that's just doesn't involve bands as such.
Yes.
It's geared more towards the traditional, it's not classical music, it's a classical instrumentation.
One for you.
But there doesn't seem to be anything in between, as far as I can tell. There is worship metal.
Yes.
Exactly. Which is missing the point, if you ask me. But, I mean, of course, we can't see everything that's out there. I'm sure there are bands out there that are really, really, really good.
I'm sure.
That are... Actually, no, I'm not that sure. But
well, just to say, I've tried really hard, and there's like a few that I really, really like,
and
but not many.
At the end of the day, it's such an endless, or bottomless rather, well of inspiration of things to sing about.
Yeah.
It's
again, even if you don't hold it to be true, you just pick up, there's a website called BibleGateway.com, which is an online Bible. Just find Ecclesiastes in the most modern English translation that you can. Just have a read. Seriously.
I'm surprised.
Yes.
I'm very surprised.
And you will see a side to the Judeo-Christian faith that maybe you weren't expecting. And I think that...
Yes, but, there's so many other obscure bits of the Bible that are, the bits that tell you which exact leg of the lamb you're supposed to sacrifice, or how wide the tent had to be when they were building.
Just from a cultural perspective, cultural and historical perspective, there's some really fascinating stuff like that.
Oh yes, and you could. The funniest thing is that if you were to interpret some of it word by word, you could end up with being as much of a fundamentalist as a lot of other faiths these days. The hint, some faiths that
Some?
tend to, you know...
Whoever are you talking about?
Yes.
You're not referring to anyone who has a penchant for black clothes and hunting knives, are you?
No, not at all.
No, he would never go there.
You get the point. It's like if you... it's all about the interpretation. I mean, the Bible has been written in a very ambiguous way, we have to say. I don't want to sound like a heretic or anything.
Some of it has.
But a lot of times I would personally struggle with interpreting it. Of course, this is where you are, I suppose, meant to listen to your priest or listen to someone that has more expertise than you do.
Yes, well...
this is where you need guidance.
That's, yeah. There's a rabbit hole I could go down with that, which I'm not going to.
It's a very, very, very deep topic to discuss, I suppose. But if you're... To me, reading the Bible doesn't answer questions like, what should I do today in order to be a good Christian, in terms of which bus to take, or which tube station to take, so that the wages of those people, trade unions or this
Oh,
or that,
right, in a very literal day-to-day sense,
This is what I mean. It doesn't provide answers like this, which I think some people are seeking in the Bible, and I don't think it works like this. Personally, that's my opinion.
No, and to that point, Ecclesiastes is one of the, I would say, hardest books of the Bible to digest, especially if you've come from that woolly, positive, peace and love sort of modern Christian perspective.
It's
you
very
read it and you're like, ooh, really? This is in my book? Ooh, dang. You know?
Yes, and you know, if only one or two people take this from this video, then I suppose we've done something.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that, you know, it is worth realizing things like that if you want to grow as a human being.
Yeah. So I think maybe we should break down a little bit of how the EP was structured in terms of how it relates to Ecclesiastes.
Yes, I mean, this being the lyrical side of things, you probably have more to say than I do.
A little bit, yeah. So the very first line of the thing was, I was the preacher. And so that should give you a little bit of a clue as to our starting point with this. So tradition has it that the anonymous preacher figure, who is the narrator and the author of the book of Ecclesiastes, was actually King Solomon, who was famous for being a very wise and very astute king of Israel.
So nearly cutting a child in half.
Yes, no, that's a very well, actually, not. Did you actually know the story?
No.
Okay. This is me telling this story will save a lot of sort of explaining the kind of person Solomon was. So basically, he would hold open court where people could come to him with their problems and with their disputes. And so I hope I get this right, but there's two women who come to him. And one woman says, my child died during the night. And this other woman here has swapped our babies around. So she's... I may need to edit this a little bit. Because there's two women arguing about whose baby is whose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of them has died, and the other one is alive.
So one of them is accusing the other one.
Yes, of having stolen it and swapping the two out, which is a kind of a crazy thing to be arguing over.
Women are crazy. No, they did this out.
Come on. Yeah, so he sees straight through it and goes, okay, there's you both had a baby, now there's one baby alive. If you're arguing over this one baby, why don't you cut it in half and share it? And so to cut straight to the core of, come on now, you know one of you's lying, and to go to push the boat out that far and to say something as grotesque as that. And then one woman puts her hands up and goes...
That really has to trigger some emotions.
Yes, she's like, okay, I put my hands up. I'm sorry. That's your baby. Off you go. But
it's reasonably obvious who's there.
Yes,
sure.
Yeah. So, but to be willing to raise the stakes that high in such a clever way, I think tells you a lot about the kind of person Solomon was. So
that's our preacher.
Yes, that is. tradition has it. That's
Well,
our
yes.
prediction. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that's the case, and that's the basis upon which I wrote the lyrics. So just a little bit of a background. Solomon is the son of David. David, the giant killer. David, the author of much of the Psalms, or the songs.
And was he the second king after Saul?
Saul, now you're asking. I am not sure about that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really...
Yeah.
It doesn't have any reflection of what we're
No,
saying,
but I
the
just...
chronological order. So it's good.
I just thought it was interesting that if indeed the preacher is Solomon, and that his father being David, who's written so much music, the fact that there's music going on in the household, and that's infused his sensibilities in some way. But also, not ignoring the fact that if you read beyond David and Goliath, if you read on to David's later life, he turns into a bit of an arse.
Oh yes, I was quite intrigued by that.
Is quite a reprehensible person in many ways, a deeply flawed man. I find it very interesting that this is amongst theologians and the church in general. This is common knowledge. David was not the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah,
and
but
yet,
I think the general consensus is that David was the greatest king of Jerusalem.
Well, yeah, and yet still he was an immense king. His lineage is people refer to him as a son of David, star of David.
Yeah, exactly.
And also the fact that Jews and Christians are more than happy to sing the songs, the psalms, the art that this very, very flawed guy created.
But then, at the same time, you could argue that a lot of characters in the Bible were very flawed. I think Moses did actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was quite disappointed with himself many times.
Yes.
And he did sort of beg God to, end it and kill him.
Yeah, he was also a bit of a drunk. There's a great story of the after the sort of the floods have gone away and the earth has gone back to how it was before. He's so happy with being back on dry land that the first thing he does is get drunk and take his clothes off and dance around.
But you see, this is something that, perhaps somewhat understandably, this isn't something the modern community doesn't seem to focus on those little details.
But why not? Why not humanize these people?
Exactly, because, if you only think about Moses as someone that parts the sea and all that, that's... Moses? Moses, yeah.
Yes,
Egyptians.
yes, sorry.
Are we confusing people?
Yes, we are, sorry. I was talking about Noah with the drunkenness, sorry.
However, the same principles apply.
Yes.
Because, if you
Sorry, you did say Moses, didn't you? You said Moses and I heard Noah.
Okay.
Idiot. Anyway.
I will learn English.
Yes.
Thinking about someone that parts the sea and all that, it's difficult to relate to a person like that. Whereas if you read about a person that, gets drunk and has his moments of weakness,
yes,
and possibly even some doubt,
yeah,
they are all just human beings.
But no, you're right about Moses cursing God and,
he was.
being annoyed at the responsibility put on him
Yes,
to
because,
lead.
What would you expect really from strong as he was?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, he wasn't, because he says to God, "Look, I'm not a leader of men. Can you send me someone to help?" And that's Aaron, or Aaron, or however you want to say it. And so God's like, "Yeah, all right, okay. Have this guy who's going to be your second in command, who's a bit better with people than you are."
Yes. So it's coming back to my previous point. It doesn't get explained that was the case. Not as much. I mean. In the church, you generally hear the same old stories about all of the glorious parts of things, but at the end of the day, it was, they were human beings, allegedly, and they were,
Yeah. So,
everything that comes with it.
So here is Solomon, who's as the son of David. He's grown up in royalty and all of the privileges that affords, and he's also presumably seen his dad be not the best person in the world, but also really, really awesome in other ways. And I think that would very much inform the tone of Ecclesiastes. So we see the journey of realization that this guy has. He's experienced basically everything that life could offer, privilege, luxury, he's done battle, he's
done some very dodgy stuff as well.
Yes, he's got many wives, and the cultural context there, that's not something we approve of in Christianity, but these people did practice polygamy. And again, that's something we can't shy away from. It's right in there.
Yes.
But this is a guy, bottom line, this is a guy who's literally had everything a bloke could ask for. And yet he finds very little meaning in it. And interesting point with those wives, a lot of them being from other nations, they expose him to other faiths. And he pursues them for a while and finds no meaning and no answer in them. And he ends up...
I think this is how a lot of people might feel these days. You get tangled up with pursuing so many things. Paying off your house, buying a nicer car, but all of that. And you keep dreaming about this, and you keep being obsessed about this new Mac with an amazing engine that you're going to buy. Yeah. And then you get it, and you're like, meh, it's actually not that great.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's something anyone can relate to.
And hence the recurring phrase that keeps coming up in all of the songs, Havel, Havalim, which is Hebrew for so the modern translation is meaningless, all is meaningless. But in more archaic English translations of the Bible, that's and it's more popularly known as vanity, all is vanity. And that keeps coming up again and again and again in the book of Ecclesiastes. It's like a lyrical motif almost, which I found very, very powerful and very, very interesting. So there's 12 chapters, there's 4 songs. I tried to cover the thoughts of 3 chapters per song. It's not, the structure isn't particularly strict the way I've done it, but I tried to take the main thrust of what he was getting across in each of those chapters and put it into a song. And that would lead us, I think the best way to close this video would be to hear how he concludes the book. So this is not all doom and gloom and depression. There's it's a dichotomy of that we've just talked about, and then the peace and the security that he found in his faith. So here's what it says in chapter 12. It says, "The words of the wise are like goads." And I had to look up that word. A goad is a stick for driving cattle. So that doesn't sound very nice, but it's it's harsh language again, but it's prodding you in the right direction.
Sorry for offending vegans.
Yes. The words of the wise are like goads, and like nails firmly fixed are the collected sayings. They are given by one shepherd. My son, beware of anything beyond these. Now here's the bit I love, because I've just come off of a very long stretch of study. It says, of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Now, I love the fact that, so when you hear, say if you switch on the God channel, or one of those atrocious Christian TV channels or radio stations, a lot of the sermons you hear will be basically like self-help seminars with a little bit of Christianity sprinkled in. This is very much not that. This is a guy who finds value in not the institution of the faith and not in any fleeting emotions, but he finds value in wisdom. And I think that's so cool.
It's very universal, you could say.
It says, firmly fixed are the collected sayings. And if you read a little bit earlier in the book, he also talks about the value of wisdom as contrasted, as he says, with...
What sounds on wisdom and foolishness, wasn't it?
Yes.
The chapter.
So as opposed to intellectual study,
Oh,
which can often lead down a bit of a rabbit hole, make you think you're clever.
Yeah, oh yes.
You're,
You come
we
across
know-
those people a lot.
we know a lot about that.
Oh yes, we certainly do.
So that is the thrust of Ecclesiastes, that's the thrust of Kohelet. I found it really, really meaningful, and as you can see from this video, the depth of my understanding is about that shallow still, when there's that much further to go, and I'm not there yet. I'm sure I've said things in this video that aren't quite right, so don't take my...
Here, but you know, this is where we are.
Yeah.
This is our current understanding.
Yeah.
You can take whatever you want from it. It's doesn't. I wouldn't say it's a devotee Christian way of thinking about things. I would say, in many respects, it's a top subject for a very, very, very long philosophical conversation. A lot of those topics do correspond to a lot of modern philosophical ideas stemming from the Germans.
Okay.
From late 19th century.
I don't know too much about them, so I can't really comment.
Neither do I, but you can see some similarities.
Okay,
but we probably haven't got the time to cover this now. It's all of the nihilism and all of those ideas.
Yeah. No, it's surprisingly dark.
Yes.
Ecclesiastes.
That's the bottom line, I think, to take out.
But not trying to sound overly philosophical, but without darkness there is no light.
Yes, let's end it at this.
No, but I'm just saying that the contrast of ones, there has to be a contrast.
There always has to.
Otherwise,
This is how the human, mind works. I think at least. That's as far as I go.
Yeah. So I hope it's not necessarily about finding what we did interesting, but I hope this and the music might take you back to our source material, which I think you'll find to be endlessly fascinating. So
yeah, I think it's a bit better than singing about your last breakup.
Yes, very much so. Anyway, I hope you found that in some way informative. Like I said, don't take our word for it. Go back to the book, see what you think, and let us know. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Until then, good night.